Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome to Writers and Books Visiting Author Series. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for people of all ages, all currently available online. Our theme for 2021 is Taking Care. We're celebrating different ways we can take care of ourselves and take care of others this year. Check out our upcoming schedule at wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're there. Feel free to submit questions to the Q&A function. Books are available through our bookstore, &Books. I'll put the links in the chat. So happy to have James Whorton Jr. with us this evening. First, we'll hear from James, and then he'll be in conversation with Charles Lamar Phillips. Charles is the author of the novel Estranged and the short story collection Dead South. James Whorton Jr. is a former Mississippian and former Tennessean, now living in Rochester, New York. He has published 3 novels, Approximately Heaven, Frankland, and Angela Sloan. His short stories and essays have appeared in the Oxford American, the Southern Review, Mississippi Review, the Washington Post, and Sewanee Review. He teaches writing and literature at SUNY Brockport. James, thanks for being here.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having us.
Sure thing.
Thanks everybody for coming. Let me describe my experience to you. I'm looking at, I see a panel of, there's a list of participants that I've, a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while, but I'm not going to be able to manage all these windows, so I'm going to turn that off for a minute. Yeah, I've been Zooming for a year and a half, and this is my first Zoom literary reading that I've read at. So it's going to take me a minute to get adjusted here. I want to thank Writers and Books, and I want to thank my friend Charlie, author of the novel Estranged, for coming out tonight. The story that I'm going to read to you is called Something Else, and it's about a man named Feathers, who's, as I forecasted a little bit, there's something he's trying not to think about, which is a difficult problem, to try not to think about something. I often have the reverse problem, which is when I am trying to think of something, I find myself thinking of a dozen other things instead. And this especially is a problem for me during literary readings when I'm in the audience. I get distracted. So you may not be like me in that way, but because I know when I'm listening to a story read out loud, I get distracted, I'm going to tell you a little preview of this story. There's 3 characters. Feathers is the husband. He's married to a woman named Molly, and he's devoted to Molly. They are. He's an English teacher. She works for an organization that is sort of a nonprofit supporting the city of Rochester, New York, and she's invited a young woman named Valencia to dinner at their house. And as I said a few times, Feathers' main problem is he's got this, he broke his foot and he's trying not to think about it because it's extremely painful. I'm going to also repeat what Dan said. If we were doing this in real life, we'd all be in a room together and I'd be able to see your faces. I can't see your faces right now. So please put some notices, put questions, and put anything you want to in the chat. This story is going to take me about 20 minutes to read. And when I'm done, I want to hear what you guys have to say. The story is called Something Else. With his shattered foot raised on a pillow and throbbing, Feathers tried to give his attention to something else. Unfortunately, attention is like a string. You can pull back on it all you like, but you can't necessarily push it where you want it to go. Across his lap, he had a book open, which he was unable to read. On top of the book was an iPad with a glowing crossword puzzle. The screen was cracked, but functional. He looked at his foot with a mixture of disgust and tenderness. It was too fragile to have a sock pulled over it, so he'd cut a sock in two, and he wore the end over his long toes where they protruded from the front of the plastic boot. That was the most presentable he knew how to make it. Feathers wanted very much to be in charge of his thoughts tonight. Molly had invited a new guest to dinner. Feathers would not have chosen to do this, but Molly had always been the leader in their marriage, the stronger force, in addition to being the more physically attractive one by far, and also the person Feathers most admired in the universe. She enjoyed having over young people whom she knew she could be of use to. Her job was director of the Downtown Rochester Business Alliance, which might sound like nothing, but it wasn't nothing when a person like Molly Holt Feathers was doing it. She knew a lot of people and had a talent for connecting them. The world needed people like Molly to help it hang together and carry on. Feathers needed her for similar reasons. His job was teaching literature at SUNY Geneseo, the professor. Sometimes, weirdly for a person in academia nowadays, he experienced feelings of devoutness. And when he did, the first thing he thanked God for was Molly. He prayed to deserve her. He heard Molly's motorized wheelchair bumping around in the kitchen. She had MS. She could walk some when she needed to. Cooking for three was borderline heroic. Feathers heard a smack, followed by one of her light, soapy-sounding curse words. "You okay?" he called. "I dropped an egg," Molly said. The guest who was coming to dinner tonight was the young woman who had called 911 and stayed with Feathers while he sat on a frozen sidewalk in blowing snow with his foot freshly shattered. Her name was Valencia Fry, and she was 26, a writing instructor at the Eastman School of Music. She held an MA in English from the University of Rochester. Also, Feathers happened to know she had a small patch of light fur on her upper arm. It was almost like a little patch of mouse fur in a place where someone else might have had a tattoo. Only this wasn't a tattoo, but an unusual soft kind of birthmark. It was a thing he was sorry to know and was trying not to think about. He swung into the kitchen on his crutches and dragged his toe through the broken egg. How foolish. Feathers' curse words were not soapy sounding. He perched on a kitchen stool while Molly drove her scooter to the back of the house to get another half sock. He loved her and wanted to prove it. Some heedless act was called for, such as biting an electrical cord. Only not that. Some gigantic, useful demonstration of his abiding love. He waited with his hurt foot dangling. Molly had just returned with a clean half sock in her fist when the doorbell rang. She gave him the half sock, and with an effort that whitened the backs of her hands, she pushed out of the chair to get to the door. Feathers, left to himself, could not reach his foot. He heard the friendly commotion in the foyer, the unzipping of the heavy coat and the shucking off of the snow boots. Molly let in their guest. Valencia Fry was wearing maroon jeans, a dark orange velvet blazer, and red wool socks. "Does he look any better than the last time you saw him?" Molly said. "Oh my goodness," Valencia Fry said. She laughed, possibly blushing too. What was she thinking? He watched her slowly take in their whole kitchen, which admittedly was rather grand for a household of two. They'd had it remodeled for accessibility and perhaps had gone overboard with deluxe appliances and reclaimed chestnut. Whatever. It made Molly happy. Molly really was very beautiful with her regal high forehead and her smile that did not insinuate anything but only made you feel smiled at. There in the expensive kitchen, they sat down to a straightforward meal of omelets, salad, and nice local beer. Foremost in Feathers' mind was his shattered foot with egg on it. He could feel the white drying. Molly got busy drawing out Miss Fry, and of course, he would not interrupt that to ask her to change his sock. He suffered quietly. The constrictedness of his whole life, his lifelong failure to transcend the given, was almost certainly due to the reverse funnel-like nature of his attention. Unlike Molly, he had never taken in the sweep of things, never seen the forest and the trees, the city and the people. His attention was good for one thought at a time. It was a serious limitation. Among other things, it kept him from enjoying background music. On the plus side, one didn't always want the big picture. Perhaps God, genderless and merciful, had provided the blessing of a reverse funnel-like attention in order to help Feathers not think about the thing he must not think about, namely the patch of soft fur on Valencia Fry's right upper arm. It was medium brown in color, roughly the shape of a police badge. Molly said something that caused their guest to laugh in a high, clear way. Feathers smiled agreeably. "Do you think so?" Molly asked him. There he sat, not knowing why he was smiling. "Sorry, what?" She blinked a mild reproof. "I think you must have knocked your head on the ice as well, hmm?" She touched his hair and scattered it gently with her fingertips. The gesture was both correcting and forgiving. And so he endeavored to aim the small end of the funnel toward their guest. Valencia taught basic English to foreign music students. Their English was at once advanced and rudimentary. They knew words like emulsify, but did not use the word "the" correctly. Valencia would mark up their essays, bestowing generous D+s. Then she'd go to their recitals, to which they always invited her, and be disarmed. How could the skinny Chinese boy with moons under his eyes bring such storms of sound out of that long, cold piano? A dark fugue swirled past her head. She couldn't grasp this music. She had no background for it, but she was touched, and maybe even temporarily broken, by the beautiful seriousness of what she heard and saw. What a grave choice these students had made to study art far from home. Then she would go back to her apartment, to the stacks of hopeless essays, and change the D's to B's because she loved them. In the long run, what did it matter if she bumped up a foreign student's grade in English 099? No one's going to hire them for their sentences anyway. Feathers, who in his job at Geneseo did similar work, only less of it, and for better pay, did not approve. But he knew why Molly was charmed by her. Molly liked people who could be moved. Molly forgave. She saw potential. Even now, she laid her fingers across his wrist, as though to remind him silently that he was being guided by her steadier hand. He needn't win the day. Taking part was sufficient. "Tell Valencia what you're working on," Molly said. Oh, the book? He really was convinced the subject was dull as dirt, but to say so would have sounded haughty. So now he found himself in the weird position of faking an interest in his own research on an early modern translator/plagiarist named Poole. When Valencia said, "That's so interesting," he wanted to smack himself. To be genuine was impossible. He got up to make some decaf. With Feathers gone, he was only across the kitchen, but it was a big kitchen. The women talked about snow boots. Feathers heard the note of patronage in his wife's voice and the gentle resistance in their guests. Molly had some heavy winter boots that might fit Valencia. They were good ones, waterproof and very warm, but she had hardly worn them, and she wouldn't use them again anyway. That last part struck Feathers as a polite fib until he thought about it. It had not occurred to him that she'd resigned herself to never walking through snow again. "Don't get up," he insisted as he served the coffee in 3 slow trips. Valencia Fry sat straight in her chair and waited for the cup to click down in front of her before she said, "Thank you." What was in her head? He allowed himself a longer moment to study her. Valencia was racially hard to place, with her curly, coarse brown hair and vellum complexion. She had a few little spots across the tops of her cheeks that might have been freckles, except they were slightly raised. Feathers sat again and was quiet. He did not at this moment enjoy being himself. He was an unpleasant person to be. What could he do? but direct the reverse funnel of his attention towards something else again. Gingerly, he tapped his plastic boot against the table leg. "Let's have lunch very soon," Molly said to Valencia. "You and me, my treat." Against Valencia's weak demurral, Feathers joined in. "Yes, let her help. She knows everyone. She can help you find a job. Give her this. You'd be helping her." He'd said a little too much, but he went on. "This is why you're here, so let Molly help." Without a doubt, Valencia was blushing now. The color appeared at her collarbones. "We are very fortunate," Feathers said. "I'm a fortunate man, as you can see. Molly is the one who makes things happen around here. Most of all, you are fortunate Valencia happened to walk up with a phone before you froze to death on the sidewalk," Molly said. "True." Valencia smiled with her eyes closed. She had class in the morning. Feathers rose on his crutches again, but let Molly walk her to the door. Molly did not limp, but touched the wall as she went. For an instant, Feathers disliked his wife's insistence on walking to say goodnight. She did this every time, and there was something almost horrible about it, like the spectacle of the graduate who rides his wheelchair down the aisle, then shakily rises to cross the stage in his leg braces, so slowly, making everyone watch. To punish himself for that thought, Feathers bit his own mouth. Molly was a moral giant, and he was an insect. When they'd left his sight, Feathers listened. He heard their guest pull on her long coat and zip the long zipper. "Didn't you drive?" Molly asked. No, Valencia had come on the bus. "Oh, no, I can't have you drive home. You can't go wait in this weather." "I drive like a champ," Molly said. Valencia promised Molly that she did not mind the wait or the weather. "It's a pretty night," she said, "and I have these boots." "Where does the bus even stop around here? I should know, but I don't." Molly was embarrassed not to know. The door, when it closed, made a soft smashing sound. Feathers eased down into his armchair in the living room. He raised his foot onto its pillow. The clean sock end had been in his pocket all evening. He brought it out. No sound from Molly. He called to her. No answer. He called again. He heard Molly crying. He thought about this. What was the best thing to do? "Molly, you're crying. What's wrong?" "She'd tell him later," she said. "Not right now." He listened. From his chair, he couldn't see her, but he imagined her to be leaning against the wall beside the door. "Please tell me," he said. It's strange. They had been married a long time, and certain things had become impossible to ask for. Certain things were too intimate. It was easier to ask them of a woman he hardly knew. Yet something as private as the reason she was crying, he would insist on being told. He would ask her 15 times if it took that. He'd keep her up late. He had done it before. "What's the matter?" he said. He needled because he was sure that he already knew. He was trying to worry his own confession out of her mouth. But as it turned out, he didn't know. "We should have had children," Molly said at last, in a voice tortured out of its right shape. He almost did not recognize the voice. "I'm crying because we might have had a daughter her age," Molly said. "Let me cry. I'll be done in a minute, and then I'll change your sock." From his chair, he heard her scrape the plates and sort them in the dishwasher. He heard the dishwasher chug. She came to him and replaced his sock. "I love you so much," he said to her. "Pshaw," she said, an old joke. It was true, there had been a time when she might have had a child. To Feathers, the risk to her health had seemed too great. Also, they'd both had their work to pour themselves into. His love right now was gigantic and needed proving. "Let's go online and buy tickets for New Zealand," he said. "We'll go this summer. They can push us up the meadows in our wheelchairs." "It will be winter there," she said. "Anyway, I never want to go on another international flight." "All right, we'll drive to South Dakota and we'll see the Corn Palace." I'll be satisfied with spring in Rochester, she said. She moved to the sofa and pulled the magazine into her lap. She had refilled her glass with wine. Feathers watched her lean to the coffee table and drag a crystal bowl near. She removed the lid and took out a fistful of Tootsie Rolls. They were left over from Halloween, and they would be as hard as crayons. What grace she had. How richly blessed Feathers knew himself to be, to see his wife unwrap and begin to eat a hard Tootsie Roll. Miracles flew off her like glitter, like gamma rays. Carefully, she tried biting it. Impossible. She sucked it like a peppermint while loudly flipping the magazine's thin pages. Oops. Something slipped. A secret panel slid open inside Feathers' jostled mind. Feathers saw again the bright animal body of Valencia Fry, naked, off-white, sprawled on a dark bedspread under an upstairs window in her apartment on East Avenue. She reclined in the pale winter daylight with her vellum limbs spread out like a starfish. Oh God, he had not meant to think of that. Do you want a Tootsie Roll? Molly said. No, thank you, sweetheart. A few minutes later, she said, I guess I'll go to bed. Cleverness closed on his fingers like a pocket knife. They'd met at a reading, and again, evidently by chance, at a recital. He'd said something that made her laugh, something half stupid, half clever. They got a drink. This sort of thing was not exactly routine for Feathers. He was not an experienced philanderer. In his head, each early step needed justifying, and he achieved it with careful half attention. No easy feat for a man accustomed to viewing the world through a backward funnel, one bright dot at a time. Eventually, on their fourth meeting, at a coffee shop around the corner from her apartment, he had won his way upstairs, where before pulling off her shirt, Valencia gave him a curious warning. You're going to see something unusual, she said, and I don't want it to freak you out. When he understood what she was saying, it both broke his heart and filled him with wonder. What about this girl's body could be so startling? Then there it was, that strange and sort of glorious birthmark, a patch of dark skin under delicate short fur, a marvelous mistake, a jangling surprise. When he told her the shape resembled a police badge, she did not seem to appreciate that small joke. It made her frown. But a moment later, when she said, I place you under arrest, he liked that very much. It made him so happy he sat up. He was a man in his early 50s, softly battered by life, but still hammering away, digging for bits of life that hadn't been chewed up and enjoyed yet. Dear God, her strong legs were gorgeous when she stretched. He got up off the bed and backed away to fill his eyes with her whole naked body. Then he had the clever idea of standing on top of a bar stool to see her all at once from above. There was windmilling of arms. The hard floor was a long way down. They took a few minutes to figure out how hurt he was. She got him dressed and laced into his shoes. Cascades of deserved pain rinsed him from inside. She shouldered him down the stairs. More ecstasies, a whiteout of pain that he had earned. She eased him onto the ice and called 911. You look awful, Molly said. She leaned over to kiss him goodnight. Is it hurting? Can I get you something? I'll be all right, Feathers said. He had skipped his Voltaren in order to be allowed 2 beers tonight, and now he was about to pay. And pay and pay. Poor Feathers. What he wanted, he couldn't have, and that was to not outlive his wife. Molly rode her scooter to the bedroom. She switched on a lamp, turned down the covers, and rose from her seat. Of course, she knew more than she said. Everyone does. And of course, if she cried, it was for more than one reason. But right now, she wasn't crying. She was standing at the sink, watching herself in the mirror while brushing her teeth. Feathers opened a book, Poole's Mechanical Sonnets, borrowed from the Italian, and read them without attention. By the time he got himself out of his chair and into bed, Molly would be sound asleep. He dragged a thumb across the cracked screen of the iPad and had another go at the crossword. Downtown, in the orange-lit dream world of Rochester, Valencia Fry had her old boots in her hands and her almost new boots on her feet, and she was running through the snow.
That's Patricia.
Hey, Charlie. Hey, Patricia. Hello.
Yeah, what a good
Hi. Hi, Gail.
She looks as beautiful. Yeah, Cheryl too. Okay.
Charlie, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Let me ask you about the title.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Clearly, Feathers is a guy. The whole point is he's avoiding thinking about stuff. It's something else. If there's this, he's thinking about something else, something like this. And I just kept thinking about the word alibi, which means elsewhere. I mean, it means something else, and that everything he didn't think about was an alibi for the thing he wanted to think about. He's always avoiding facing himself.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you thought of him as a weak character for that, a weak protagonist.
Yeah, I do think of him as a weak character. And yeah, I mean, it goes by really quickly in the end of the story there. There's this really quick line where he says, or he's thinking what he wanted he couldn't have, and that was to not outlive his wife. And I guess in a way I'm trying to, I don't find him very likable. I can't imagine that anybody would find him likable. But yeah, I guess I think part of what he's working on there is that he knows he and his wife are about the same age, and he loves her, but she's not going to live as long as he will. And so there's some dread of that, but then of course he's done this thing he regrets. He both enjoyed and regret, which was to have an affair with this younger woman. Yeah, he's weak.
Yeah. And it's pretty sympathetic to me for a weak.
I mean, people screw up.
Yeah, I know. The line that got me was that he was in his early 50s, softly battered by life, but still hammering away, still trying to go on. So that's his alibi. That's his excuse to himself. That's what he's still trying to live.
Yeah.
And again, what's remarkable about the story is the stuff that he tries not to think about. It keeps coming back.
Well, I mean, it's fiction, of course, and so I just made all this up. But and I mean, not obviously because y'all don't all know me, but in fact, I've never been in this situation, but I could imagine that it would be a very difficult situation to have had this, exciting and regrettable affair with a younger woman, and then your wife invites that same younger woman over to dinner at your house. I think the story kind of leaves the question a little bit open as to whether Molly realizes, like, did she invite Valencia knowing that to rub it in Feathers' face? I think that's a little bit open.
She struck me as a somewhat controlling character too.
Yeah.
Well,
she does run the Downtown Rochester Business Alliance.
That's right. She runs the business alliance. She's going to help out this woman. I mean, there's a kind of patronage about it all that
Yeah.
What? The birthmark. Patricia's handing me a sign saying birthmark. She's, it makes one think of the Hawthorne story, the birthmark, where the guy is married to this woman who's absolutely beautiful, but he he can't get over the fact that she has a birthmark on her face, which is the shape of a hand, and he keeps obsessing about it till he literally destroys her. I think is what happens in the story. So I wondered how much you were aware of that. Oh.
Yeah, I think I have read that story. I mean, Hawthorne, I like Hawthorne. He didn't have a very light touch, did he?
No. He was kind of a glum guy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I don't really know where that birthmark came from. I think I've,
The police
it's a thing that happens.
The good thing about the police badge is what's,
That's just nonsense. That's just some nonsense that
I know.
came in there somehow.
The other thing, I don't know if you're aware of this too, is all the orange, color orange keeps coming up all through. Valencia, of course, is orange.
Oh, yeah. No, I hadn't thought of that. I know what you're talking about.
She's in the, the orange sunset and stuff. I kept thinking, well, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if he was even aware of that.
No, I hadn't thought of that.
So do you think that his wife knows?
Yeah, she probably knows. I'm not sure she knew when she invited Valencia to dinner, but I think she probably figured that out in the course of the evening. I mean, I don't know if it's pretty quiet in the story, and I don't know if it comes through hearing the story out loud. He broke his foot in her apartment, and then the plan they came up with was that she'd drag him out to the sidewalk and call 911 from the sidewalk, pretending that he'd slipped on the ice and broken his foot on the ice. So, I mean, it makes sense that Molly would invite her to dinner to thank her for calling 911, but I think Molly would have figured that out in the course of dinner, if only because he's acting strangely.
Yeah, I mean, Patricia immediately assumed when she was crying that that's what she was crying about. That she had come to the realization that there was something amiss with the girl.
Yeah.
Although it took me until Feathers got self-conscious about it,
Yeah.
in the next thing.
I see some people are putting questions in the chat there.
Good.
I see a bunch of old friends in the chat, and thanks old friends for coming to this. A bunch of people I haven't seen in a long time. Feathers is a lightweight. Oh, maybe that's why he's called that. I got the name from, it is an odd name. When I was a kid, we had a bus driver. When I was in, I think 6th grade, we had a bus driver named Feathers. That's where that name came from. Somebody said, is it part of a published collection? No, it's not. It was in a magazine called the Southern Review, but I don't have a book of short stories. Charlie does. I'd like to someday.
I mean, short stories I've heard are great, so I think you should have. I mean, this is the second of yours I've seen. Oh, but you do have.
I haven't. Well, Allison asked about the choices for point of view. Is shame and emotion you're exploring here? I think the point of view is, I'm not sure it works in this story, but those two books that you just held up, Charlie, all the novels that I've published have been from really straight first person point of view. And this story is a little weird because of the way, I think it's different from other stuff I've written in the way that we're mostly in Feather's head all the way through, but at the very end, it goes into Molly's perspective when she goes up and looks at herself in the mirror and Feathers is not there. She's just looking at herself in the mirror. And then that last shot of Valencia where she's got the snow boots on that Molly gave her and she's running through the snow. Obviously, Feathers and Molly can't see her there. Yeah, Sharon. Okay, yeah, Sharon's saying that in the chat. We shift in and out of Feathers' consciousness.
It's
Are
mostly,
these also his imagining?
right.
Sharon said in the chat. Well, the way that I understand it is that no, the story leaves Feathers and sort of the story goes upstairs to look at to be with Molly for a minute. It doesn't go in her head, just sits with her for a minute, and then it goes and follows Valencia as she's gotten off the bus downtown and is running through the snow. We don't go into either woman's head, but we do leave
But seeing her
Feathers' head.
snow is kind of liberating at the end of I mean, it's sort of, you know, the story is so close and claustrophobic. And then when you pull back and see her running through the snow, it's just, I mean, it's a very nice touch. I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I find it claustrophobic too, and I'm really that's the part of the story that makes me the happiest when she gets the heck out of that house, and because it's not a happy scene inside the house. I'm happy for her that she took the bus and left.
Just slides away.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's she saying? I can't read these questions. It's interesting that it doesn't do.
Yeah, I hope I don't know if you guys, if everybody who's in the audience can read the chat, or if only we can read the chat.
I can't read it. I can only see parts of it. Dan's back. He's going to tell us.
Hey, I can read the questions.
Dan, can all the people in the audience?
They can't see them, so I'll read them.
Okay, okay.
It says, it's interesting that it doesn't do more than look at their bodies. In contrast, still and running inside and outside. This gives them a kind of integrity and viability, but it also makes them still the object of the gaze.
You're right. You're right. And I don't know why the story has that pattern. That's not a set of rules that I came up with deliberately, but you're right. The only person whose head we're inside of is Feathers' head. And we see the two women from outside. But we're not quite seeing them through his eyes because they're both alone when we see the two of them. Yeah, there it is.
Well, there's
It gets a little weird. The perspective gets a little weird.
outside of him, though, that you question his take on. I mean, for me, I didn't think Molly was as good as he thought she was, or he was as innocent as he thought he was in the seduction. It seemed to me that you do pull away from him. I understand what she's saying, though. I mean, you do see the girls, the women, as objects for his, as they reflect on his life.
So we have another question from George Raleigh Adams. What led you to this story? How did you come to it, or how did it come to you?
This I really don't remember, and I'm not being yeah, I don't remember, George. It's all made up, and there are bits of it that I could I mean, Molly is kind of loosely based on the wife of an old friend, a professor of mine from many years ago. But I don't know where it came from.
I think we have time for one more question.
I can see, hi Kara, I can see your question. Can you talk about how if this story evolved, is this how it started? Did it go down different paths as you were writing it? Did you focus in on some areas that you liked or felt more strongly about? I think it was pretty instinctive, and it became sort of a technical problem of trying to, there's this big secret that Feathers is trying, he's got it sort of right in the middle of his mind and he's trying not to think about it, the fact that he had this affair with Valencia. So it became sort of a technical problem of how to make that, sort of set that up so that at the moment it's revealed, it instantly made sense. And I don't know if it works or not, but that became an interesting technical problem. Sort of like a sleight of hand kind of thing. Like if you, because if it seems totally out of the blue, then it's just going to be dumb. You have to believe that he's a person who's capable of this, and all of this stuff that he's thinking early in the story. I love my wife so much. I'm so devoted to her. I'd do anything to her. That has to quickly turn from, wow, he's really devoted, to, wow, he really feels guilty.
Sort of sleight of hand.
It's a really, yeah. It's a,
look over here, look over here, look over here. But this is,
Sharon said, what makes you so interested in all the lies they tell themselves and each other? I don't know. I mean, yeah, lying is interesting, and I'm kind of sorry that I read such a dark and gloomy story about deceit between people. I wish I'd picked something happier, because I don't get to read a whole lot. And
do they know they're lying to each other?
Huh?
Do they know they're lying to each other? I mean, is Molly aware that she's
I don't think so.
being deceitful? And is he? I don't think they're aware of it, really.
I mean, he knows that he's. I think he knows that he's lying about the affair, but I don't think he realizes how much the I love you is a kind of a defensive. Wow, this has turned really dark, guys. I wish I could see your face. I'm reading the chat. Love can be ugly. Why not explore this? I wish I could see your faces, guys, because I know this is about to end, and we've just I've taken you to a really dark place. It was a beautiful day in Rochester today. It was a sunny, cold day. I loved sunny, cold Rochester, New York days. And I'm really grateful to you guys for coming to this, or staying home for this, I guess I should say. You didn't come to it, you stayed home for it.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for reading. Thank you to Charles. I want to thank our funders here. Buy their books. The links are in the chat. You can find this and other readings on our website. And thank you so much for coming, and have a good night.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Look, it was a great story. Don't Matt, being dark. It was great. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks.